Because of what God has done through Junction, I have fellowship,
I have identity,
accountability,
abundance, growth,
purpose,
I am challenged,
love,
encouraged,
empowered.
Where two or more join together, a junction is formed. That is what happens on Thursday nights when young single adults from across the Brazos Valley join together to worship God, study His Word, and learn how God can use them to impact their world. This isn't a new idea. God has always used His people from all different backgrounds to impact the world around them while transforming their very lives through His grace. God continues His work through Junction, where men and women are finding victory and freedom from long-standing struggles and realizing their identity and significance in the unshakable life given to us in Jesus Christ. Are we perfect? No. We come from a variety of backgrounds and carry a variety of struggles. At times, we all get distracted and stumble. But when those times arrive, it is vital to have a community of men and women reminding us of God's grace and encouraging us to live in pursuit of greater things. You are invited to be part of this community where you are welcomed, wanted, and known.
I am welcomed, wanted, and known.
Welcomed, wanted, and known.
welcome, wanted, and known. I am welcome, wanted,
And known.
Welcomed.
Wanted and known.
I am welcomed, wanted, and known.
Glad you're here. You made it to Junction. We are coming kind of close and quickly to Thanksgiving. It's just a week away. We're getting ready to host a bunch of people, which is going to be fun and awesome. And then we only have one more Junction this year. So one more after this is going to be the Christmas Junction. It's going to be awesome and incredible. And so, not that this one's not going to be, but I was just thinking this evening is that it is almost always important to be looking forward, right? Like, it's just, in life, it's good to be looking forward. When you get caught looking back, bad things happen. I think about this. Years ago, I was a youth director in the United Kingdom, and we met in a school, and I was in a hurry. That's pretty much all you need to know to set the stage for this. And when I'm in a hurry, I walk briskly, quickly. And when I'm in a hurry and I'm looking for somebody, my head is on the swivel as I go. And I was walking down the hallway, and the hallway has rooms that shoot off to the side. And the pastor is standing right over here, and he's got a new couple that they want to talk to me. I'm like, that's great. But I have things to do, places to go, people to see. And so I just get done telling about the awesome stuff that God's doing in our youth department. And then I'm like, okay, nice to see you. And then I take off at a power, like boom, boom, as fast as I can go. But I'm not looking where I'm going. I'm looking back because I'm looking for somebody. And I'm pretty sure they're back there. What I forgot is down the hallway, for whatever reason in the UK, they thought this would be a great idea. The big iron beams, the posts, they were right there. And so because I wasn't looking forward, what happened is boom! I mean, literally like 4 steps into my power, takeoff. And this couple, they're like, oh my goodness, like, are you okay? But I had to save my face. I was like, I'm fine, and just moved on. So it's good for us to always look forward, right? But it's also really good for us to take some time and look back. And I was thinking about this years ago. My family, we go to Oregon all the time. Not all the time, but we have for many, many years. And this has been a long time ago. I was out there, and my cousin's wife's cousin, was also there. And a good friend of mine, he and I were going to climb to the top of Black Butte, and this cousin's wife's cousin wanted to come with us, but she really wasn't in very good shape, and she was a little nervous about making it to the top, and so she just it was challenging. And so as we pulled up, she was really, really nervous, and we just kind of told her what to expect. Like, hey, let's just not worry about even trying to get to the top. We're going to go a little bit. It's kind of steep. But then there's a switchback, and once you go up past the switchback, we can stop and rest there. Then we can go a little bit further. There's this cool tree. Go a little bit further. You just kind of gave her these smaller goals. But what we found is, as we were going, made the first goal, the second goal, the third goal. As we were going, what we found was the most efficient thing and most helpful thing for her was when we would stop to take a break, it was to look back. It was to stop and say, you know what? Do you remember when we started off like an hour and a half ago? Do you remember we were at the parking lot, and we didn't even think we were going to be able to make it to the switchback, and we did. Wasn't that cool? And then from there you thought there's no way you're going to make the next thing. And yet the next thing was this field goal tree. It's this tree that comes up, has another tree grow out of it. And it's kind of this weird looking tree. But we made that. We got to see that. Wasn't that cool? And then we talked about getting to the tree line up there where the trees actually burnt out, not the tree line, but the trees, they open up and you get this beautiful view of the ranch and a beautiful view of all these mountains around. And here we are, we're standing right here. And so each time that we were looking back all the way up to where we are, what it did is it just brought this encouragement. It brought just a depth to that experience and that journey. And if I were to call my best friend from childhood, Brian, if I were to call him right now, what was your most memorable time? It was climbing on the mountain with this girl. If I were to contact her, she would say, absolutely, I remember that because we kept looking back, and it gave me the hope and encouragement I needed to move forward. And so that's what we're going to do today. We've covered a lot in this implications series. We've taken the gospel, we've overlaid it onto a whole bunch of different things. And I just want us to pause for a brief moment and just take a look back. We're only make 2 stops. It's kind of where we've been and then give you an example of, you'll say an example of what, we'll get to that example in just a moment. And so where have we been? We have been, when we started off, remember we talked about the gospel. If you were here for the entire time, awesome. If you've missed sometimes, that's okay. You can catch them on YouTube if you really want to. If this is your first time, well, you'll know what you've missed, but not in great depth. But we started off talking to Stephen, what is the gospel? And the word there, it's so cool. Its original, how it was being used was not just good news, but victorious good news. And when you're sitting there thinking about living hope, when you're sitting there thinking about the chains that have been holding all of us in the middle of the brokenness, it's so cool that the gospel, the message of Jesus Christ that liberates us from that, it is the gospel. It is good news of victory. And so we started though talking like, what exactly is it? And we laid out for you, we gave you the wordless book, which is what I really enjoy doing because reading sometimes is hard. But this one, there's no words and you just kind of walk yourself through it. We also looked at 3 circles of sharing the gospel. Like what you begin asking people, like, how do you see brokenness in the world? And most people are willing to engage with that. Like you just know the world's not right. You see storms, you see tsunamis, you see earthquakes, you see hunger, you see disease. You see all that. You just see how horrible we can treat each other. You can look at the world and say it's broken. And then if we're really honest, we're broken. Most people will sit there and say, I'm not right. And I'm trying to fill that void with something. And so we talked about that tool a little bit, that you're trying, whether it's achievement, wealth, relationships, whether you're just trying to escape it, whatever else it may be. But then enters, what are we broken from? God had an original design. And that brokenness that came in there, it's because of sin. And the solution for that is Christ. He sent his one and only son who died on a cross, and he paid the price to fix your brokenness. But he didn't stay dead. He rose from the grave to prove that he alone is the one who can fix your brokenness. And all that he asks is for us to trust, not to go climb mountains for him, not to donate a certain amount of money, not to work really, really hard just to avoid a sin to prove your worth. No, he just says, you just believe. It's really an amazingly powerful thing. I mean, the gospel, we kind of broke it down this way, that we're all broken, that Christ's death alone will fix our brokenness, that Christ rose from the dead, proving he alone can fix us. Simply believe and trust that Jesus alone fixes us. Sometimes we sit there and like, did I word my prayer right when I was 6 years old, or when I was 12 years old, or when I was 18 years old, or when I was 22 years old? Did I say it correctly? God is not so consumed with what are the words that you're saying. It's what is his heart attitude? And it's just admitting that, I just typed this out here of, God, I'm broken, and I know that I can't fix it. You're just confessing that. Like, I know there's brokenness. I have tried so many ways. I can't fix it. But thank you that you gave your son Jesus to fix my brokenness. Not just the world's. He did that too. But to fix my brokenness. And that happened through the cross. And I trust in him alone. And I thank you. You're like, that's too easy. But that's the magnitude, the simplicity, and the beauty of grace. That's the gospel message. And it's incredible in that simplicity and that beauty. It transforms lives in amazing ways. But then we started saying, okay, the gospel, if I really believe these things, if I really trust that God is the one who's in control, if I really trust that he has a purpose and a plan for me that is good, it may not be comfortable, but he's always working in and through me for his glory and for his good. If that's the case, like when I begin to think these things through and different truths about who he is, and we overlay it in our lives, what are some of the things, does it change how we approach different areas? For example, we started right away with community. We are, as followers of Christ, we are to be in community, and that community is to look radically different. We looked at Hebrews that night, and we talked about the fact that we are to encourage one another day after day, so long as it's still called today, so that there's no just hardening of our hearts that happens. And so we looked at, we as followers of Christ, we are expected to be in community, that when you overlay the gospel in our lives, we should not be Lone Ranger Christians, that we should be in close relationships with others who know the ins and outs of our lives. That's just one of the things that we talked about. There were other things there. But then we looked at Jesus the following week. We looked at him because we needed to be more wowed by who he is. Some of us become so numbed by the gospel, like, yeah, okay, then he came and he died on the cross, and then he rose again, and that's great. But we just needed to be wowed at the magnitude of what he has done. And so we started actually with the magnitude of sin and how it broke everything. And we looked at from the smallest of the small to the biggest of the big. We began to look how that brokenness has impacted everything. And it is all made right through Jesus Christ. And why we were wowed by the amount of brokenness, we should be even more wowed at the fact that the offering of Jesus Christ fixes all of that. Truly, truly amazing. And then we looked at, what about our view of self? What happens when we overlay the gospel, we take it and we put it on top of how we view ourselves? Remember, we surrounded us with these incredible truths of who we are. We just pulled out 8 of them. And we looked at it and we said, yeah, this is true of you now that you're in Christ. You're not who you think you are. You're not who you are is not, I am Todd Berkey and I'm a pastor at Grace Bible Church. That is true, but that is not who I am at my core. Because that position of being a pastor at Grace Bible Church, that could all be taken away. It could all go away. But who I am in Christ is not. And so we want to build our identity based on what Christ has given us, not what we have earned. And so we looked at that. We also looked at how do we begin to view others? And specifically, if the gospel is true, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believed in him would not perish, but would have eternal life, John 3:16. Well, if that's true, there's only 2 options. There's perish or there's eternal life. And if that's true, every person that we bump into, God passionately loves and wants to move towards, and he wants to use you. He's inviting you into sharing with them the truth of his Son. So we looked at how do we engage with others? Are we willing to step into gospel-centered conversations? And we hopefully relieved some burdens that sharing the gospel in a gospel conversation doesn't always have to be, here's the bridge illustration, here's the 3 circles, or here's the wordless book. Like, it can also just be conversations about, man, tell me a little about how you grew up in your family. Did they go to church? Like, where are you with this? Who do you think Jesus is? And even if they are repulsed by the question and give you a repulsive answer, that's okay. You're moving conversations deeper and deeper and deeper. From there, we began to look at stuff. We talked about being stewards versus owners and how, man, as soon as we become owners and view ourselves as mine, the very provision that God has given us for life turns around and becomes really a place of death because we worship the provision and not the provider. And we talked about that it's all his, our time, our talents, our energies, our schedule, our money. It's all his. We're just stewards of it. And we looked at Zacchaeus and the rich young ruler during that time. We continued from there. We started talking about relational tensions. If the gospel is really overlaid on your life and we're following Jesus, if we've changed how we view ourselves, how we view others, and how we view our stuff, we are going to look differently, and that difference is going to create tension. And how do we engage with that? Should we be discouraged with that? We said, no, the gospel comes in and says that's just how it's going to be. We should actually say thank you when we experience that. And if we're not experiencing some of the tension, we started looking at that like maybe we need to kind of reevaluate and see, like, is the gospel penetrating all areas of my life? Or am I holding things back because I'm just too either embarrassed or ashamed to try to stand out? I'm a little nervous by that. Not that you would ever lose your salvation, but you're missing out on the joy of following Jesus and enjoying all that he's given you. From there, we started talking just about fear in general. Like, how does the gospel, which is fear, what is fear's core? Where is it? How does it manifest itself? And what does the gospel do to that? From there, we started talking about forgiveness the next week. Like, as followers of Christ, should we be unforgiving? And we talked about that forgiven people forgive people. We talked about Matthew 18. We talked about, remember, 160,000 years of work is what one guy was forgiven, and he was unwilling to release somebody over 100 days. Like, just the magnitude of that. Then from there last week, we talked about just how the gospel, when we overlay it within dating and relationships, how does it just look different? And so this semester, we've covered a lot of ground. There's been a lot. We talked about guilt and shame. I mean, we've covered a whole bunch of stuff. And it's good for us to sometimes go, wait, we did talk about this. Wait, we did talk about this. And the interesting thing is each of those weeks, there was every single week, there was a challenge. Every single week, there was a challenge and encouragement, like take some time during this week to reflect on this, to help lock those truths in. You had the opportunity to continue to grow. And so this entire semester, we've had these great opportunities to understand more and more and more the magnitude of what it looks like to have the gospel infiltrate the rest of our lives. So what we came to the conclusion, if you haven't followed it, what we're coming to the conclusion is simply this. The gospel, or Jesus, basically he ends up changing our story. If we're no longer defined by our situation with the family we grew up in, if we're no longer defined in how our fathers talked about us or that our moms and dads abandoned us, if we're no longer defined by how our friends abused us or our peers abused us, if we're no longer defined by the experiences that we've had, but we're defined by Christ, he's rewriting our story in an incredible way. And Jesus is here to rewrite our stories. And that's where we come into this example. Now, I want to move fast. We're just kind of skimming. So we look back. But I just want to give you an example. We're going to be in the book of John, and we're going to be in the 5th chapter of the book of John. And I'm going to go ahead and read John 5, 1 through 11. After this, there was a Jewish feast, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool called Bethesda in Aramaic, which has 5 covered walkways. A great number of sick, blind, lame, and paralyzed people were lying in these walkways. Now there was a man there who had been disabled for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, and when he realized that the man had been disabled a long time already, he said to him, "Do you want to become well?" The sick man answered him and said, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. While I'm trying to get into the water, someone else goes down there before me." And Jesus said to him, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Immediately the man was healed, and he picked up his mat and started walking. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jewish leaders, they said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and you're not permitted to carry your mat." But he answered them and said, "Well, the man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" We're going to just skim through this. But we talk about Jesus rewriting the story of your life, and I just want us to just look at this man's life, just briefly, this guy. I'm going to try to blast through this, but one of the things here that we know, that this guy, he had long-standing and severe brokenness. 38 years unable to walk. For 38 years. There is incredible, long-standing, and that I think we would say is severe brokenness. You know, when you apply it to our own lives, I mean, some of us who are here, we've been having these long-standing struggles, whether it's with porn and masturbation, whether it's with alcohol. Some of us have having these long-standing struggles where we keep trying to find our identity in relationships. Some of us have these long-standing struggles that we keep trying to find our identity, our value, and our worth in our job title or educational achievements. Some of us, we have these long-standing struggles that we thought we could just escape everything by diving into video games or binge watching. And instead what we found, we were just so addicted to it that we have to keep watching the same episodes over and over and over and over and over again because we identify, man, I am Jim and Aaron is Pam, and so I have to keep watching because that's my real life. Like we try to escape into that, but it becomes this addiction that we can't break on our own. Many of us in this room, we have some long-standing and very severe brokenness. So does this man. You see it there in John chapter 5. What else do we know about this guy? Well, we know that he had misplaced hope. I mean, I hope you see that in the text. He knows he's broken. He knows there's brokenness in him, and he knows that he needs help. Where is he looking for his help? More than likely, this pool is actually 2 different ones surrounded by walkways that had covered areas. And obviously, we read there's a whole bunch of sick and lame people who were there. And there was a legend, basically, that was if the water stirred, when they stirred, if you were the first one in, you got healed. So everybody gathered around and they just watched and kept watching for the water to stir, watching for the water to stir, waiting and watching and waiting and watching and waiting and watching and waiting and watching. And then when it stirred, like, I think I saw it. Boom, they'd all go in. And then they come out like, was it you? No. Was it you? No. Was it you? No. Maybe it was just a breeze, and it really wasn't the angel's wing that came down and stirred it. And they came back, and so his entire hope, he had tried everything with no success. It was misplaced. I come back to our long-standing severe areas. Have you been trying to fix the brokenness that is in you through any other means other than Christ? I don't know. If you can relate to this guy. The next thing, we know this guy's a crowd follower, right? He's not off saying, okay, I'm going to go do my own thing. No. We see this in a lot of ways throughout the story, but specifically here we see it. There's all these other people. This is where they go. They're saying, this is the hot spot. If you want to get well, if you want to get healthy, come here. Come on, this is what we're all doing. This is the latest fad. If you want your life to make sense, you need to try this diet and this fitness routine. It's going to clear your mind, clear your body. You're going to be a whole new person, and life will be great. And so, oh, really? Yeah, let's just go ahead and dive into it. I'm all for eating well. I'm all for fitness. I'm all for making those adjustments. But if our complete hope is in that, we're missing out. This guy was like, okay, if this is what everybody else says is going to work, I'm in. We live in a world that says, man, you don't really need Christ. You can figure it out on your own. This is where you're going to find life. You're going to find it in a relationship, but not really even a committed relationship because, marriage, that's old school. Just come in, move in with the person. You guys just take what you want from each other. You'll have this agreement, and as long as you're feeling in love, it's all going to be A-okay. It's going to meet your needs, and then you're going to have, maybe it'll last for a year, maybe it'll last for 10 years, who knows? But if you tire, then because you're not married, you don't have to worry about it, the separation of goods or anything like that. You can just say, peace, I'm out. Oh, that sounds really good. Is there a really popular way to go? Yeah, that's okay. Let's do that. Let's dive in. Other people say, man, I really was a nobody until I got my PhD. Once I got my PhD, then I became a somebody. Oh, okay. I'm going to go get my PhD so I can be a somebody. Man, I really was a nobody until I all of a sudden go to the gym, and they said once you're able to bench like 450, then you're somebody. And so you get to the gym and you start working, and you get jacked, thinking now you're somebody, because that's what the world says is where somebody is defined. That's this guy. He's a crowd follower. One more thing about this guy. He's totally disinterested in Jesus. Totally disinterested. Jesus shows up. We already know in the book of John, you would read through and you'd know that he's already done miracles in Jerusalem. He's come through and everybody knows about it except for this guy. And the one who is the actual miracle worker is standing next to him asking him, do you wish to get well? And as you read the text, he's like, yeah, but nobody will put me in there. Nobody put me in the healing waters. And Jesus is like, I am the healing waters. Not there. It's me. And this guy's like, yeah, whatever. As a matter of fact, he gets healed, right? Well, who's this guy who told you to carry the mat? Had we read a little bit further, he's like, I don't even know. I don't even know who healed me. And so you have this guy who long, severe brokenness. You have him looking with misplaced hope. You have him being a crowd follower, and you have him being totally disinterested in Jesus. That's him. It might be you. But let's look at this Jesus, because there's some stuff here to get really excited about who this Jesus is. Jesus, he does this. He comes up, and he's not put off by the guy's brokenness, is he? He's not like, ooh, you're too much of a hot mess. Oh, well, 38 years you've been in this condition. I need something a little bit easier. I'm going to go over here. How long have you been? Oh, that's still too long. That's not Jesus. He's not put off. He doesn't run away from this. He runs towards what others are running away from. It's an incredible display of who Jesus is. Another thing we learn about him, man, he is not put off by others being disinterested in him. So if you spent some time in your life and you've been like, Jesus, whatever. I don't care anything about the church, whatever. That has not made Jesus go, oh, you didn't like me when you were 8, so I don't like you now. Like that's not Jesus. He's incredible. Even though we've been so offensive, he still moves towards us. That's a beautiful, wonderful, and amazing Jesus that I want to follow. What else do we know about him, man? He's a social rebel. Jesus, you want to mix things up. You don't want to just be like everybody else. Follow Jesus. Because see, here's the deal. All these broken folks who are there, they're all viewed as unclean. And so the righteous people, the holy people, and the wealthy people, they wanted nothing to do with this area. Nothing at all. They're like, avoid it, because if I accidentally bump up against you, then I become unclean and I can't go enjoy the things that I want to. And so they all stayed away. And Jesus says, stay away from that. No, I come right in. Breaking social norms? Because you're going to see Jesus is going to be in the temple later on. So he's not like I'm picking up anybody else's uncleanliness. Jesus is incredible. He is stepping into places that nobody else is willing to go. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, what's the result? Well, the result here, and like I said, we're flying through this, but the result is there's personal transformation. I mean, do you see that? The brokenness in an instant, gone like that. Get up, take your mat, and walk. I mean, I always find that tremendous. 38 years, if it were me, if it were me, I would be like, they don't work. Get up. They don't work. Get up. Jesus, 38 years, they don't work. I'm telling you, just get up, Todd. They don't work. And back and forth we would go. He'd have to reach down. He'd pull me up. I'm like, I'm going to make a fool of my, whoa, look at this. I'm standing. It's truly incredible. This man's life in an instant is transformed. Brokenness is met and filled. And not only that, the result of that encounter with Jesus, his story, his brokenness has been filled in. And the next thing you see that he lives differently. Everybody else is saying, don't carry your mat, man. And he's carrying his mat. Why are you carrying your mat? We're going to get you. Because the guy who healed me said to live differently. And so I'm going to listen to him over you. Because he's changed my life. Truly, truly an incredible, quick story. All to simply tell you this, that Jesus, he changes stories all the time. All the time. However, the brokenness in your life, however that's manifested itself, if it's come in and it's been like, I know that I'm broken, I know that I'm lonely, I know that I'm insecure, but I think I have really good brains, and so I know if I just hook my identity to that, if I step into that, that'll fulfill me. And then you chase academics for as long as you can go, and then you get everything, and then you realize I still have brokenness. Right? Like it didn't work. You need a change of narrative where you're not putting your hopes and dreams in your degrees. Or you know there's brokenness, and the only thing you can do is just ignore it, and so you just need to dive into video games. You need to become somebody who's going to be the next, is it Ninja? I don't know. He's old school now, right? And for Fortnite, like everybody's like, ooh, my kids are Ninja. I played with Ninja. Like, you didn't play with Ninja. Oh, yeah, I did. I took him down. Like, whatever. Anyway, maybe that's where you've been trying to find your identity. I don't know. But no matter how long you've been running after these things that will not work, Jesus is there to change your story, to redirect and move it in a way that is truly, truly beautiful. Because he takes the broken and he makes it whole. People who follow the norm, he just says, no, we're going to be different. Come on, we're going to be different. See, the gospel, when it overlays every area of your life, your story is going to look different. It doesn't mean you're going to be wealthy. It doesn't mean you're going to be without disease or sickness. It doesn't mean you're going to be without pain in your life. But it does mean in the middle of those things, you're never alone. It does mean that in the middle of those things, there's some peace and there's some hope. It does mean that you're going to have some anchor moments where you're able to look back and say, remember the switchback that we never thought we would make it to? Yeah. But we made it through that? Oh, yeah. That's going to give you hope for the next thing that you walk into. Remember that relationship that ended and you thought there was no way you could continue on? Remember that when it was the most important thing in your life? And as that just was taken away and all of a sudden community came around you and I moved near you, do you remember that time? Yeah. On this next failed relationship, it's going to be the same. It's going to be okay. He's here to rewrite the stories of our lives. So we looked at real quick things. I told you I was going to move quickly. Where have we been? The gospel, man, it practically changes stories. And I think this is neat, this example. We looked at a long-standing, severely broken person who followed the crowds. He had misplaced hopes, and he was disinterested in Jesus. Yet he was actively loved and pursued by Jesus, who was willing and able to change their story. He's beautiful. He's amazing. And I know this has been kind of a rushed, quick thing, but I'm going to ask the band actually to come back up. We're going to spend some time worshiping him. And as they're moving forward, I want us to think for a moment. We always have these little challenges. We've looked back at what he has done in the areas that we've covered. We've looked at what his desire is to change the story in our life. And so I just want to, this week, I really do, in the next 2 weeks, because you have Thanksgiving, you're going to have some downtime. You're going to be sitting there going like, oh my goodness, I thought this was going to be so great to be home with around all these relatives, but now I'm hiding in the bathroom so I can have just 10 minutes of peace and quiet without people asking me questions I don't want to answer. And so I encourage you, park your brain on a few of these things. Just begin to think, has your story already been changed by Jesus? And if so, how? How has he changed it? Have you ever stopped just to look back and and ponder that? And maybe your life hasn't. Maybe you're sitting there like, no, there's been no change whatsoever. I don't even want anything to do with Jesus. I would just encourage you, like, why? Where is that coming from? What's your hesitation? And then from there, I just begin to encourage you to identify, man, as you're looking back, is there any portion of your life where Jesus brought change? And for that, during our time of worship, let's just begin to think about that and celebrate that. Or if there's a portion of your life that you know you've been avoiding Jesus as leading in, maybe there's unforgiveness that's there. Not even unforgiveness of another person, but maybe it's unforgiveness of yourself for the choices you've made. You can't believe that you're steeped back in pornography and masturbation again for the 12th time. And you walk out of your place and you sit there and you're unlike Jesus and saying, like, my God, why have you not forsaken me? I mess up all the time. I don't understand. Why do you still pursue me? Why do you still love me? Maybe you're sitting there in the middle of that brokenness right now. Maybe there's areas where you're just unwilling to allow Christ to have his way. I don't know, but you do. And so during this time, I just really encourage you over the next 2 weeks to spend some time thinking on both of these things. And then you know what? Man, would you share? Would you be bold enough to share what is going on in you with folks at your table? Would you be willing to invite them into a little bit of the things to celebrate alongside? Or to come alongside of you and be like, man, I can plead with you for Jesus to move in incredible ways in this area.